Hey guys. All right, today we're going to talk about the different types of cell division. Um, Now, if you have not done the mitosis um, assessment that's in Schoology, then you need to do that first because that's going to help you review over mitosis and kind of refresh your memory about the things that we talked about before we went on spring break. All right, now since we're not in class together, you're not going to have your note sheets and stuff, so you're going to have to take notes on notebook paper. I know this is going to be different, but you can do it. I'm going to try to help you. I'll highlight some of the key things, like we did before. You'll just need to jot them down. So if I'm going too fast, just stop the video and you can write it down and then you can start it back up. All right, so we're going to start with mitosis. And hopefully you remember that mitosis occurs in the body cells, and sometimes we call those um, somatic cells. Okay, and mitosis, remember, is really important for two reasons. It's for growth and tissue repair. So remember we talked about how everybody started out as that one cell, as that zygote, and then that cell divided, and those cells divided, and those cells divided, and eventually they would differentiate and take on different roles and things like that. But mitosis is that process of getting more and more and more cells. So it helps with growth and also helps us to heal when we break a bone or hurt ourselves. All right, now um, remember, it's really important that you remember that the chromosome number stays the same. So it maintains the diploid chromosome number. And remember, diploid is the same thing as full. That's the same thing as the full chromosome number. And sometimes we call that the 2N number. So like for humans, the diploid or the 2N number is 46. Okay, now the result of mitosis is two cells, and they are genetically identical, and they have that full chromosome number. So, for example, with humans, if you have a body cell with 46 chromosomes, it goes through mitosis, it divides into two cells. Each of those cells would have 46 chromosomes. And it's able to maintain that because of DNA replication during interphase. All right, so then that brings us to meiosis. So we're going to compare the two. So, like most everything that you're going to be doing with this unit is going to go back to comparing mitosis and meiosis. So you can't forget what you learned about mitosis. All right, so meiosis, it's not about your body cells. It's actually about sex cells. So it occurs within the sex organs. So for females, that would be the ovaries. For males, that would be testes. And then in plants, that would be flowers. So this is the production of eggs in females, sperm in males, and then pollen in flowers. All right, so why is meiosis necessary? It's necessary for sexual reproduction. This is the process that produces the cells that are needed to create offspring. All right, now it is often called the reduction division because it actually reduces the chromosome number to half, to the haploid number. So remember, look at that word haploid, okay, right there. So that makes me think of half. So haploid is half of the chromosome number. So you start out with a cell that has 46 chromosomes. It divides into two cells, and then there's another division. So you end up with 4 cells, and each one has half the number of chromosomes. So you started with 46. Each of the new cells will have 23 chromosomes. All right, now this process is actually going to help maintain the chromosome number from one generation to the next. And then, so that means that like the egg cells that are produced in females will have 23 chromosomes. The sperm cells in males will have 23 chromosomes. So when they come together in fertilization, you end up with a offspring with 46 chromosomes. So like here's the egg. It has 23 chromosomes. Sorry, it's hard to write this. The sperm has 23 chromosomes. And so then when these two cells come together in fertilization, you end up with the zygote, which has 46 chromosomes. And then from that point, that's when mitosis would take over. So meiosis is the production of the egg and the sperm. All right, now remember the result of meiosis is 4 cells. They are going to be genetically unique, and they are going to be haploid. They're going to have half the number of chromosomes. And sometimes we call that, instead of sex cells, we'll call those gametes. That's the same thing. So when you see the word gamete, same thing as sex cells. Okay, so, and that of course is the sperm, eggs, and pollen. All right, so that's a general overview of the differences between mitosis and meiosis. Okay, so, oops, let me get my pointer here. Hopefully we can move on. Here we go. All right, so let's talk specifically about mitosis and remember we gotta remember what we learned before and the main things that happen in each of these phases. So I'm gonna kind of go fast on this part because we should already know this. So like we said before, it occurs in the body cells. This is really important, and you might want to put a star beside it or something because sometimes we forget this, but it's only one round of division. So that means it only goes through PMAT one time. So I would say PMAT times 1. Okay, now let's go through these phases real quick. Remember prophase, that's at the very beginning. That's when you first see chromosomes. So the chromosomes appear. Remember, it was in that stringy chromatin form, and it coiled up and condensed and formed the chromosomes. All right, now you're going to wonder what I'm even talking about because we haven't really discussed this at all, but you'll see in just a minute. It's important to remember that you don't have any pairing. So the chromosomes do not pair. The homologs, these are matching chromosomes. They don't pair up during prophase of mitosis. All right, so, and you may want to make sure you know what that is. Homologous chromosomes, and these are chromosomes that have the same size and the same shape, and they code for the same traits. So you have chromosomes, half of your chromosomes would come from your mom, half from your dad, and so those matching chromosomes would pair up. But not during mitosis. That's going to happen during meiosis. All right, so then mama metaphase, mama middle. So this is when the chromosomes line up individually in the middle of the cell. Anaphase, remember we called it the away phase, and this is when the sister chromatids are going to separate from each other, and they're going to be pulled towards the opposite ends of the cell, toward the opposite poles. And then telophase and cytokinesis, that's when you're going to start to see 2 distinct nuclei. They're going to have that full diploid chromosome number, and then the cell eventually splits. Okay, now the result, like we said before, 2 cells, they're genetically identical, and they do have the full number of chromosomes, so they are diploid. All right, so that's mitosis. All right, now we want to compare that to meiosis. And we're going to look at what happens in each phase. So this is mitosis. You can see, remember prophase, you got all the nuclear material breaking down and spindle fibers forming, and the chromosomes line up in the middle, and then we see the chromatids splitting apart and moving away from each other, and then we see telophase, 2 nuclei, and then cytokinesis, where it's splitting into 2. All right, so now meiosis. Okay, like we said earlier, occurs in the sex organs, 2 rounds of division. So that means it goes through PMAT twice. So like I said before, that's pretty important. That's something somehow we kind of tend to forget or kind of mess up on. So you might want to make a note of that. So it's PMAT times 2. So that means it's going to go prophase 1, prophase 2, prophase 1, metaphase 1, anaphase 1, telophase 1, and then directly into prophase 2, metaphase 2, anaphase 2, telophase 2. So it's PMAT times 2. All right, so now let's talk about what happens in each phase. Prophase 1, really, really important things happen here. And something happens here that we're going to mention over and over and over again. And it's something that makes us all very unique. Okay? So, first of all, the homologous chromosomes are actually going to pair. Like I told you in mitosis, they don't do this. Well, they do this in meiosis, specifically during prophase 1. And they get real close together in a process called synapsis. And I always say they synapse together because they get really, really close to each other and they form what's called a tetrad. Okay, and that a tetrad looks like this. Okay, you would have 2 chromosomes. So here's one, and then you would have its pair, its match, its homologous chromosome right next to it. So that's a tetrad. So they synapse together, they get real close together, form a tetrad, and then while they're like this, a process called crossing over occurs. And this is the process I was talking about that's so important, okay? So the process called crossing over, and this is why we're unique, okay? So this is why daughter cells are unique. And basically what this is an exchange of genetic information. And I always tell my students it's like kind of like 2 old ladies. I mean, no offense, but you know, when 2 ladies get together, a lot of times they're going to gossip. They're going to exchange information. And so that's what happens here. These chromosomes exchange DNA with each other. And that happens during prophase 1. And that's what makes you're similar to your parents, but you're not exactly like them because of crossing over. All right, so then that brings us to metaphase 1. All right, metaphase 1, you're going to see those homologous pairs, and they're going to line up in the middle of the cell. So it's still mama meta, mama middle, but you've got pairs of chromosomes. You've got these tetrads lined up in the middle. All right, then anaphase 1, the homologous chromosome pairs are going to separate. Okay, so those homologous chromosomes separate, or we could say the pairs separate. Okay, and that's a little different than what we saw in mitosis, right? You saw actual chromatids being pulled away from each other. Here, you're just going to see these pairs separating from each other. All right, and then that brings us to telophase 1 and cytokinesis 1. You're going to see 2 nuclei form, and they're going to have haploid chromosome number, but they're going to be full chromosomes, okay? And the cell's going to split. Now, that's not the end. That's just the first division. It's going to go directly into the next round of PMAP. All right, I do want to point out to you, this is happening, each of these things is happening in just one cell. And when you see the word pairs, okay, like pairs of chromosomes, that's a clue that it's meiosis 1. All right, so now let's go into meiosis 2. All right, so you've got prophase 2, and here's what I want you to remember. It's in both cells. So all of meiosis 2 is happening in 2 cells simultaneously. All right, so both cells, you're going to see chromosomes appear, nuclear membrane and nucleolus disappear. This should sound a lot like mitosis, okay? And because it looks a lot like mitosis, you're not going to have any pairing of chromosomes. So no pairing is going to occur. No pairing of chromosomes. And it's going to look a lot like prophase does in mitosis. All right, and then with metaphase 2, it's going to remind you of mitosis again, except it's happening in 2 cells simultaneously. The chromosomes are going to individually line up in the center of the cell. All right, and then in anaphase 2, it's happening in both cells simultaneously. The chromosomes are going to split, and you're going to see the chromatids move to the opposite ends of the cell. And then telophase 2 and cytokinesis 2, both cells, it's happening in both of them at the same time, and you're going to see 2 distinct nuclei, and then eventually the cell splits. All right, so really important, make sure you know the result of it, you're going to end up with 4 cells. They're going to be unique, and they are haploid. They're going to have half the number of chromosomes, and these are your gametes or sex cells. So in females, this process of meiosis is producing eggs, and in males, it's producing sperm. All right, now I put a little video link in here for you so you can watch this and kind of see how the process works.
In prophase.
And I'm just going to kind of walk you through it real quick, but you can see the chromatin condensing and forming the chromosomes. Okay, you see them pairing up. Here they are forming those. That's the synapses forming those tetrads. And then you see the crossing over. They exchange DNA with each other. All right, spindle fibers are forming. Okay, we see them kind of lining up here. This should look, we remember this from mitosis, but the difference is we see the pairs of chromosomes, the homologous pairs. All right, so now they're lined up in the middle. So this is metaphase 1. And then we're going to see those pairs are going to start to move away from each other. There he goes. That's anaphase 1. All right, and then we should start to see spindle fibers are going to start disappearing, and we're going to see the nuclear material reappearing at each end of the cell, okay, and then cytokinesis occurs. All right, so that was meiosis 1. Now, in both of these cells, we're going to see meiosis 2 occur. Okay, we got prophase 2 happening right here. Nuclear material breaks down, spindle fibers start forming. All right, and then metaphase 2, they align in the center. Now, this is 2 separate cells here that this is happening in. And then we see the chromatids move away from each other in anaphase 2. And then we see 2 separate nuclei in both cells. So we end up with 4 cells. And each of them have half the number of chromosomes. Okay, so now this is just kind of a diagram. It would be a great idea for you on your notes or on a separate sheet of paper or whatever to maybe jot down these pictures of meiosis 2. That will help you. You will have to recognize the pictures and put them in order and know the phases. So of both meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. So remember, it goes prophase 1, metaphase 1, anaphase 1, telophase 1, and then prophase 2, metaphase 2, anaphase 2, telophase 2, and you end up with 4 cells at the end. Okay, so the last thing we want to talk about is the difference about meiosis in males versus females. Okay, so the general thing is the same in terms of it's 1 cell, it goes through 2 divisions, and it forms 4 cells, but there are some major differences that we need to note. All right, so in males, it's going to be called spermatogenesis, okay, which should make sense because it's forming sperm, okay, and it's going to occur in the testes of the male. It produces 4 viable sperm. So that means 4 sperm that can actually be used for each cell that undergoes meiosis. Now, the reason that you end up with 4 sperm cells that are actually functional and usable and everything is because the cytoplasm is going to divide equally in both rounds of meiosis. Now, something I want to point out to you is that once a male hits puberty, he can continue making sperm throughout his life as long as he remains healthy. You've probably heard of like older men, some 75, 80-year-old man, and he fathers a child with some younger woman. Okay, so, and that's because men will produce sperm throughout their life. All right, now, females, we're going to see some differences here. So with females, meiosis is going to be called oogenesis. Okay, so a little bit different. And it occurs in the ovaries of the female. And this is something you definitely want to make note of. It produces only one viable egg from each cell that undergoes meiosis. Um, and this is because there is unequal division of cytoplasm. So, what happens is because of the unequal cytokinesis, you're going to end up with one large egg, and we call that the oocyte, and then three non functional polar bodies. So, you have four cells that are produced, but only one of them is actually going to become an egg. And those three non functional polar bodies, they die off and they're reabsorbed by the body. Um, Females are born with all of their eggs that they're going to produce, and once they hit puberty, a female will release one or two eggs each month until she reaches menopause. So that's, if those eggs are not fertilized, then um, you know her body gets rid of it through her period. Okay, so that will happen until menopause. So that's why women are not as likely to have babies when they get older, because they eventually run out of eggs, whereas men will produce sperm throughout their life. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for mitosis versus meiosis. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message through Schoology or Miss Menachino, and all I can say is make sure you go back, look at the video again, um, draw your pictures in your notes, and take your notes, okay? All right, and don't forget to do all the activities that you're supposed to do each day. Have a great day.